When most of us think about Disney, we think about wholesome childhood memories, or maybe even our favorite TV show or movie. But in reality, Disney's just one big corporate money-making machine. They basically own everything: TV shows, movies, theme parks, Hulu, ESPN, ABC, and record labels. They make money from controlling characters and brands, and the people inside those brands, they're just assets. And most of them aren't even adults yet. See, when Disney finds a kid with star potential, they milk them for everything they can. They build an entire ecosystem around them: the show, the tours, the merch, the public appearances. Every part of that kid's image is managed by the company, down to what they wear, what they say, how they act in public. You're 13, 14 years old, just trying to figure yourself out and barely have any control over your own life. On the outside looking in, everything seems to be perfect. The machine prints more money, the kid gets famous, everybody's happy, at least for a while. See, when I started looking at every pop star who got their start at Disney, I kept seeing the same thing play out. Phase 1, you're young, you're wholesome, or at least you have to pretend to be. Every part of your image is controlled. Then phase 2, your contract ends and overnight you finally get your freedom, except you haven't been prepared for it. And then phase 3, you either rebel against the fake image of yourself or you just collapse. Lindsay Lohan has made an amazing comeback in Hollywood. So much so that you almost forgot that not that long ago, she was on drugs, addicted to alcohol, and was arrested multiple times. Now, even though most people never directly tie her to Disney, her most notable and breakout roles were 2 Disney movies, The Parent Trap and Freaky Friday. Lindsay also had a music career. She wasn't really a singer, but when you're a Disney child star, that doesn't matter. She signed a record deal with Casablanca Records, but they weren't signing Lindsay Lohan, the singer. They were signing Lindsay Lohan, the Disney star. Now, Lindsay's issues really started at home, from the toxic relationship between her parents. She had to constantly perform the balancing act between dealing with family drama and smiling for the camera and being a teenage role model.
The first day of filming Parent Trap in LA, my dad came to see us, and then 2 feds walked in and cuffed him and put him in the car.
But even worse, once Disney was done with her, she went from being one of the most supervised young women in Hollywood to being completely on her own. Here she is, a 19, 20-year-old with unlimited money, unlimited access, and a level of fame that most adults can't handle. And then we got free Lindsay. The partying, the DUIs, the legal troubles, in and out of court, in and out of rehab, the mugshots. The problem with becoming a pop star at Disney is the system was never designed to prepare her for what comes after. And with no stability at home, she never stood a chance. One day you're a Disney property, and the next day it's just you in the media. Now you have to figure out how to become an adult, but the cameras never stop rolling. Demi Lovato is one of the best singers to come out of Disney. She would have made it in the music industry either way, but her roles on Camp Rock and Sunny with a Chance made her a superstar. She wasn't quite ready for it, but that star power turned her into one of Disney's biggest cash cows.
You talk in the documentary about the commodification of these Disney and Nickelodeon stars, yourself included. Do you remember how you felt when you first saw your image kind of exploding in that way, like the merchandising angle of it and all of that?
You know, I didn't really understand how that could affect my psyche. You really start questioning all of the decisions that you make. And as a rebellious teenager, I resented that.
She's the star of a hit Disney Channel movie. She has her own show, and she has vocals for days. All of that made her the perfect candidate for Disney's record label, Hollywood Records. Disney created Hollywood Records in 1989. Before then, they only did soundtrack releases. But the CEO at the time, Michael Eisner, noticed they were leaving too much money on the table. Disney was ready to expand into the mainstream music industry. Hollywood Records' first big success was Hilary Duff. And even though she wasn't a good singer, the formula worked anyway. From then on, if you became a fan favorite on a Disney show, the music deal was bundled right into your contract. So now, Disney doesn't just control your image and your show, they control your music too. And Hollywood Records doesn't work like a normal record label. See, labels like Universal and Sony, they go out and they find real artists and real singers. But at Hollywood, they take kids who are already famous from the show and they push them into the music industry and they force them to make watered down pop to fit the Disney brand. Now, usually the crash out happens after Disney, but with Demi, her problem started while she was still there. The eating disorders, the self-harm, drug use, the pressure to maintain this wholesome image all while falling apart on the inside. All of this was happening while she was still on Disney's payroll, still smiling for the cameras.
It was only Like 2 weeks before I was introduced to heroin and crack cocaine.
My first time doing coke, I was 17, working on Disney Channel, and I loved it.
I think that to be the poster child of perfection and mental health and all these kind of things is such a dangerous, slippery slope.
Be the good girl, hit your marks, don't complain, don't deviate. But suppressing all of that didn't make it go away. She just delayed it. And then once the Disney structure fell apart, it got worse. Rehab, relapse, public spiral, and then the constant identity shifts. When you spend your teenage years being told what to do by a corporation, you don't develop your own identity, you develop theirs. And when that disappears, you're left trying to figure out who you are in front of the entire world. The Hannah Montana show was pretty ironic. Miley lives a double life, normal kid by day, famous pop star by night. And then in real life, she lived the exact same reality. She said the role caused her to have body dysmorphia and that she couldn't tell the difference between herself and the character. When your developing brain is being asked to split itself into two, and one of those people is owned by Disney, that does something to you.
You know, at one point, again, it went from, it was school, then it went from, you know, how much weed can I actually smoke and still play a teenage superstar on the Disney Channel? and then like.
What's the answer to that question?
More than you would fucking think.
And of course, Hollywood Records had the music deal. Hannah Montana albums, Miley Cyrus albums, soundtracks. They built her up as this all-American perfect sweetheart. And then the contract ended and all hell broke loose. The VMAs, the bangers era, shaking her ass. They say all publicity is good publicity, but going from Disney Channel to face down ass up, that's a big ass for your audience. But I guess that was the point. See, Miley needed to destroy Hannah Montana so aggressively, so publicly, that no one would ever could confuse the two again. Because as long as people saw Hannah when they looked at her, she was still trapped.
While you were shedding your Disney persona and becoming an adult in the public eye, when you look back at that period, what do you see?
What I see in myself is being bold and courageous and like having the guts, and I see myself being authentic to me. That's what I was doing.
Miley went from Hollywood Records to RCA Records, where she finally had the freedom to be herself. But because Disney doesn't know what to do with you once the show is over, she didn't know how to be herself. From there, she basically went through a long identity crisis. She took on the slutty persona with bangers, then she took on a hippie dreadlock persona with her experimental album, and then she wanted to appeal to a more conservative crowd and went country for her album Younger Now. Now, luckily for Miley, she did eventually find a way to be edgy and be herself without being the provocative sex object. It took about 10 years to destroy the Disney persona and build something better, but she finally found her sound and found a purpose with starting the Happy Hippie Foundation.
I wanted to give my life a bigger purpose. I did not want me naked on a wrecking ball engraved on my tombstone and that be all that I'm worth. I want my legacy not to be about the amount of records that I've sold. I first and foremost want to be known as a humanitarian and, you know, an activist.
Now, honestly, Bangers was a hit. It went multi-platinum, and she needed that artistic freedom at the time. Now, we can't directly blame Disney for the mental health issues she had along the way, but it does seem to be a recurring theme in all the Disney child stars. Now, growing up, I think a lot of us fantasize what it would be like to be a child star on one of these TV sets of our favorite show, but in reality, not everything is always what it seems. Selena Gomez didn't have legal issues like Lindsay. She didn't spiral like Demi. And she didn't rebel like Miley, but she withdrew and kept her darkness inside, which can sometimes be worse. Same system, same Hollywood Records deal, and same pressures from Disney to be innocent and perfect. But instead of the damage showing up as chaos on the outside, Selena suffered in silence, and everything came to a head as she struggled to build her own image after Disney.
I feel like a product. It was like making me angry. You know what it is it made me feel like Disney. I just like, I've spent years of my life trying to not be that.
Anxiety, depression, having to live with being bipolar, stepping away from the spotlight multiple times. And on top of the psychological trauma, she also had to deal with physical issues. She was diagnosed with lupus and she had a kidney transplant. Now, Selena has never alluded to Disney being the source of any of her issues, but if you read between the lines and listen to some of her interviews, it's pretty clear as day.
Disney Channel is definitely a machine. They obviously care about a show, they want to make it the best, and they give everything they can into one thing and each of their projects.
The pressure to always be likable, to always be positive, to never show weakness. If you grew up in the Disney system and those messages were drilled into you from childhood, they don't just disappear when you become an adult. In 2021, in an interview with Vogue, she said, "That was my job in a way, to be perfect. You're considered a figure kids look up to, and they take that seriously there." Then she went on to say, "I think I spent so many years just trying to say the right thing to people for the sake of keeping myself sane." The biggest problem in Selena's story is she tried to keep being good, so much so that it took a toll on her own health. She's proof that the damage isn't always the kind you can see. It looks different, but it's the same Disney curse. Now, if we want to go even deeper, we can see many more examples. Britney Spears got her start on Disney with the Mickey Mouse Club. Now, her downfall was much more complicated, but becoming a star at such a young age laid the foundation for issues that will haunt her for the rest of her career. Bella Thorne from Disney's Shake It Up, she came out and spoke publicly about being SA from an early age, but she also spoke about the Disney pressure to appear perfect and how it made everything worse. And she had to pretend to be someone that she wasn't just to keep the gig. Then Zac Efron from High School Musical, he ended up in rehab for cocaine and alcohol. Dove Cameron had panic attacks while filming Liv and Maddie. She was grieving her father's death and dealing with an eating disorder at the same time. And we all know Shia LaBeouf from Even Stevens. He's been public about his addiction struggles. And literally while I'm filming this video, I got a news update saying that he was in New Orleans fighting people at Mardi Gras. Orlando Brown from That's So Raven, his ongoing legal issues and substance abuse and just being batshit crazy on a regular basis. You know, it actually kind of sucks, especially as being a millennial who grew up during the golden age of Disney and Nickelodeon, just to learn that the people you grew up with on your favorite shows, they went through so much darkness. We got documentaries like Quiet on Set that really shines a light on everything. But I guess the silver lining in all of this is now that so much has come to light, things are actually starting to change a little bit. Not just on TV, but child star influencers too. In 2024, Governor Newsom signed an expansion of the Coogan Law, which originally protected child actors' earnings, but now it also covers child influencers and content creators. And Raven Simone, she's doing her part and hired a therapist to work with child actors on her show Raven's Home. And she's been pushing for mandatory mental health professionals on every set that has minors. Also, Allison Stoner from Camp Rock, she's now working as an on-set mental health coordinator and advocating for it to become an industry standard. Another silver lining is a lot of these Disney child stars, they actually go on to have very successful music careers. However, the story is never really that simple. Sabrina Carpenter is another Disney Channel pop star who's been open about the negative side of Disney executives controlling her life at a very young age. And you can hear more about her story by watching this next video here. Until next time, peace.